Guys, today we are looking at Duke basketball. It's Jack, and we've got a fun preview, I think, today. Duke basketball is the team in college basketball that I will be covering the most. I'll try to get to as many teams as I can, but I will cover each and every Duke game throughout the season. So if you're a Duke fan, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. Last year, Duke went 27-9 under Coach Scheyer. In his second season, he's entering his third year this year. They were 15-5, which was second in the ACC. They lost their one ACC tournament appearance, and then they went 3-1 in the NCAA tournament, making it all the way to the Elite Eight, where they lost to NC State on their Cinderella run to the Final Four. And I think that's important to note right off the bat, because last year, well, the year before, was good for Duke against their in-state rivals. This year, they went a combined 1-4, losing both games to North Carolina and losing the ACC tournament game and the NCAA tournament game against NC State to go 1-2 against them. They did go 9-2 in the non-conference, and I felt like last year there were moments in the year where it felt like the team was putting everything together. And then a couple of times, actually, they played North Carolina, and it just didn't seem like they had it in the NC State game in the ACC tournament. And while they did beat Houston, there is, a little bit of an asterisk to that game with Jamal Shead going down. So, with that being said, obviously, as many of you guys know, there's a lot of turnover with the Duke basketball roster going into this season. And let's recap what those changes are right now. So, who's gone? Who's back? And who's new with Duke basketball? Who's gone? Well, Ryan Young's out of eligibility. Kyle Filipowski and Jared McCain both went to the NBA draft and were both selected in the top 35 picks. And Jeremy Roach transferred to Baylor. Mark Mitchell transferred to Missouri. Sean Stewart transferred to Ohio State. TJ Power to Virginia. Jaden Schutt, Virginia Tech. Jalen Blakes, Stanford. Christian Reeves, Clemson. So, with that being said, there are a number of spots to fill on this year's team. And when you count it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 scholarship players left the program after last season. And Coach Scheyer kind of made it clear that he was looking for guys who were ready to compete. And he brought in some different types of players for this upcoming season. But before we get to that, quickly, who's back? It's not a long list, but there are two key players, Tyrese Proctor and Caleb Foster, who are both looking to improve off of last season, where both of them had injuries and a little bit of inconsistency, and I think are poised to have, if not breakout years, better seasons. And then, you've got your veteran leadership players in Spencer Hubbard, Stanley Borden, and Neil Begovich, who are all back for the Blue Devils and will provide good practice players for the squad. Now, who's new? First, let's go over the transfers. So, Malik Brown, Sion James, Mason Gillis, and Cameron Sheffield. Malik Brown is a guy who I liked at Syracuse. He did play as a center at Syracuse. Undersized, he's like 6'8", but he does have like a 7-foot plus wingspan is my estimate. I haven't seen that confirmed, but that's my estimate. He just seems like a guy who gets a lot of deflections. Sion James was a guy who I was not familiar with until Duke landed him, and going back and watching his tape, looking at his stats, he's a very intriguing player who I think can help a lot, both on the defensive end of the court and then offensively getting to the basket. I think that's going to be the area where he helps the team the most. And then Mason Gillis. I think he's the guy who's probably the most well-known of the three, having played at Purdue, been a part of their really good teams over the last couple of years, and then their national title, their final appearance this past season where he came off the bench. And he's a really reliable veteran player who can defend, rebound, and definitely hit an open three. He's been like a 40% plus shooter for the past handful of years at Purdue, and I think that will continue at Duke. Cameron Sheffield is brought in, as far as I know, to be more of a practice player this year, but maybe next year he enters the rotation. He's got 2 years of eligibility remaining. Now, the freshmen, I'm sure these are the guys that you were waiting on. So Cooper Flagg, we all know about him. He's going to be awesome. Come on, Maluak. I think it's going to take time, but I think he's also going to be awesome. Isaiah Evans and Con Knuppel, I think, are in different ways going to be good scorers for Duke. And I'm not sure what their roles are going to be. We'll get into that in a second. And then Patrick Ngangba and Darren Harris, the guys from Paul VI, where Duke is, a little bit of a pipeline. Jeremy Roach, Trevor Keels, and now these two guys. I think they are multi-year players, and I hope they stick around in the program, because right now we're going to get into the projected lineup and rotation, and it's just hard for me to see minutes for those two players in particular. With that being said, though, Darren Harris he's up there with Con Knuppel to be the best shooter on this team, and probably Mason Gillis you can throw in on that list. So in particular situations, he could find his way onto the court. But I don't think he's part of the rotation to start. So my projected starting lineup, and you can see my in-depth version of this. I have a video. I'll link it at the end of this video, just going over what I project the Duke rotation to be. But quickly, in this video, Tyrese Proctor, Caleb Foster, Sion James, Cooper Flagg, Malik Brown, I think is what they're going to start with. It's interesting because no one's shorter than 6'5", but no one's taller than 6'8" or 6'9". So you have a lot of defensive versatility. And I think Malik Brown is going to start at center at the beginning of the year. But I would take it a step further. I think Kama Maluak is going to start by conference play, maybe sooner. I just think it's going to take him a little bit of time. They're going to work him in slowly, and so I think he's going to come off the bench initially, along with Con Knuppel and Isaiah Evans and Mason Gillis. I think those are your four guys who are part of the rotation off the bench. Minutes-wise, again, in that rotation video, I have it all broken down, and I think there's going to be some fluctuation early on in the season as Coach Scheyer. The question with this team, they've got a lot of height, they've got defensive versatility, and they've got guys who can shoot, but they're not necessarily the same players. And so I think the challenge with this year's team for Coach Scheyer is figuring out the combination of defense, versatility, and three-point shooting. And how does he meld that with this roster? Because he's got all the pieces, it's just how do they fit together. So, moving to the schedule and predictions part of this video, I think this Duke team is going to be really good. And they've got some challenging games early on in the season. Quickly, the non-conference schedule, they'll take on Maine and Army, which I typically wouldn't mention those kind of games, but Maine for Cooper Flagg I think is a cool thing. And then Army is, as far as I see it, as a guy who's been a Duke fan pretty much my whole life, it's like the Coach K, you're bringing in Army kind of game. But then they've got 4 challenging matchups before ACC play starts, and then 1 in the middle of ACC play. So they'll play Kentucky in the Champions Classic, and then they'll play at Arizona. They'll play Kansas in Las Vegas as a neutral site game, and there's talks that could turn into a home-and-home moving forward. And then they'll take on Auburn in the ACC-SEC Challenge at home, and then Illinois as a neutral site game in Cameron North at Madison Square Garden in February, which I really like as a game that's kind of like a nice prep game for the NCAA tournament. Now, in conference play, Duke will have home and away games. That's probably a better way to say it. Against North Carolina, Wake Forest, and Miami. And if you've enjoyed this video so far, please give me a like. Helps us grow. And then at home, they'll take on Cal, Florida State, NC State, Notre Dame, Pitt, Stanford, and Virginia Tech. And on the road, will be Boston College, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Louisville, SMU, Syracuse, and Virginia. So, how do I see the regular season faring for Duke this year? Well, last year they went 9-2 in non-conference play, and I think that's going to be the same. I think they'll go 9-2 again. I think those 5 matchups, I think they'll win 3 of them, but I think they could definitely drop 2. The games in particular, the games I would think they could drop would be the one at Arizona and Kansas. I think they'll win the home game against Auburn. I think they'll beat Illinois at Madison Square Garden. And then the toss-up for me is the Kentucky game, simply because I think Kentucky is a very intriguing team. They've got a lot of all new pieces, but they are experienced, and so I think they could gel quicker than maybe people think, and could be a little bit better than maybe people think. With that being said, though, I think this Duke team, is going to be the best team in the ACC. And with that being said, I think they're going to go 17-3 in conference play, which will give them a regular season record of 26-5. And I'm really high on this Duke team. I know I didn't spend a lot of time talking about specific players, but I just think that they've got all of the pieces. They have a star player in Cooper Flagg, and I like that they've got Proctor and Foster, who are two capable point guards who can handle the team and then get the ball to guys in position to make plays. In particular, Proctor, who's a really good playmaker as a guard, and I think he'll be even better this year, along with Foster, as their roles are more defined, whereas last year playing with two other guards in McCain and Jeremy Roach, it was a little bit more tricky to find consistency for them on a night-to-night basis. But yeah, Cooper Flagg, Sion James, Malik Brown, and then Kama Malawak, I think could be awesome by the end of this year. And then Isaiah Evans and Con Canupel. I think one of those two guys could really break out. Mason Gillis is going to provide great shooting. Like, this is a really good team on paper. We'll see how Coach Scheyer does in his third season. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How do you think Duke is going to fare this season? If you're a fan of another team, let me know. I will definitely be open to profiling your team, as we've got a little over a month and a half until the season. And tell a friend. Sorry about that. We're trying to grow this thing as much as we can and follow as much college basketball as I can. So see you guys next time. Peace.